Welcome to Objections with Stan Willis. I'm Michael Morris. With me, friend of mine, friend of the show, Stan Willis. Stan, how are you?
Am I allowed to talk now?
No. So the people know if they're just starting to listen in the first 30 seconds, Stan always ruins the opening of the show before I can get it out. So then I never know if it's the beginning of the show.
I always want to tell you that the feedback has been that they like my part of the introduction way more than they like your part. Isn't that right, Nate?
Yep.
Right.
One person has said that just now.
It's like 3-1 from the 4 listeners.
I was going to say, there's your wife, who I know hates when I introduce you.
Now, Reeve
There's
told
Nate.
me that I'm far more interesting than you are.
Reeve looks like a French bandit with that mustache.
He does kind of.
And Kendall is starting to look like a young Raleigh Fingers.
Yeah, we need to have them on the show, by the way.
Oh, I would love to do that.
Okay.
But if you'd have to have Kendra schedule them to be out of the office so they could ruin.
I'll get that done. I also ran into Jason. He wants to come back.
No.
He does. He wants to come back.
He was very good on the show, but no.
No? No? All right, Nate says he'll allow it.
Just because he's the producer of the show, he gets like 1/9 of vote. He's like when the Indians wanted to vote in the 1700s. It doesn't count. I meant the address, 1700 block of New York.
Is that where you vote? That would be a good way to keep people from voting.
That's why they keep the Dominion.
Everybody can vote. Here's where you have to do it.
They should
on paper with a number 2 pencil.
The last election, they let people vote whether they were in this country or not. Do you know they passed that law, by the way, that if you don't have to be a citizen to vote anymore?
In some places.
I can't wait to see
it's
how
in
those.
New York City, right? Isn't that New York City?
No, they're trying to make it nationwide.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So we I could be sitting someplace in like Rhodesia or Rhodesia's not in Zimbabwe and decide, I'm going to vote in the U.S. election today.
Well, they're in this. They want Russian people to be able to vote in our election.
Do they?
Yeah.
That sounds like a great idea. Who thought of
isn't that what they were all upset about? Is the Russians?
A freaking brilliant idea.
Listen,
who came up with this idea? Is this a Biden administration thing?
Nate said it was okay. The producer of our show
came up with this idea.
So
I mean, sometimes ideas like that. I mean, it sounds like you were polling kindergartners. Well, I think everybody should vote.
Well, listen, those kindergartners are being turned into little boys and girls, and they're not born that way. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Let's talk about other people.
What are we here to talk about? Other people?
We're here to talk about China.
Let's talk about Nate.
We want to ship Nate to China.
Okay.
We're waiting on the box.
We're gonna ship Nate to China in a box. That becomes problematic when you have to go to the bathroom. Actually.
But we won't be able to see his TikTok videos if our Congress decides we are getting rid of TikTok in the United States.
I'll be very disappointed.
Number one question I have for you is that not censorship?
Probably. Well, I think you could make since TikTok is based in China.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Since TikTok is essentially a recording bot for Chinese, and so that not only what you're doing while you're on TikTok, but also potentially things that are happening when you're not on TikTok are being recorded and sent to China. And since China is, shall we say, a rival, I think you could probably make a national security argument that's a valid national security argument for banning TikTok.
But you're okay with Twitter and Facebook and these other apps that are U.S.-based companies doing the same thing.
Well, I was just getting ready to say,
no, you weren't.
You have to be somewhat careful as you walk down that road, because we get so many goods from China. So if we're going to say we're going to ban TikTok, are we also going to ban Samsung TVs?
Oh, that's a good point.
Because literally Samsung TVs are recording everything that happens in front of them.
But at whose request, by the way? At the U.S. government's request.
Well, but Samsungs are not made. You're trying to follow me here. They're not made here.
First of all, I refuse to follow you. But second of all, my point is this.
And I've warned you about what you do in front of the TV. So,
But that's why I want to put it on TikTok because it gets more views.
well, you don't know that.
I find it funny. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. What I find funny is that we are so against spying, only if it's on us, but we will do it to you, and that's okay.
Well, yeah.
I mean, during the Obama administration...
Isn't that what spying is all about? Well, we're against spying unless the spy is dating a congressman, in which case it seems
totally
to be
different because they're in love.
Right.
I'm
sure that's what that was.
The Chancellor of Germany found out she was being spied on, and that Obama's administration said, yes, go ahead and do that. And he had to publicly apologize once that came out. Oops, sorry, Maggie, we didn't mean to do it. I bet
we didn't stop, though.
Well, I find it hypocritical that between Twitter and Facebook, all your information's already out there. Our government already has it. It is we don't want China to have it. What are they going to do? Go after a bunch of TikTok dancers?
I just think so much intelligence and so much deep thought and so much of our critical intellectual infrastructure happens on TikTok. And they just don't want all of that being available to the Chinese. I mean, did you see the other day when the guy had the guy that soups up the snowmobiles?
Oh, the guy trying to get in the back of the truck bed and he falls and the thing falls on his face. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, so
look that up. It's wonderful.
Things like that, we just don't want the Chinese to have access to them.
But if you get on TikTok, so they're saying that TikTok is influencing kids to kill themselves and all that.
Really?
So I've never seen one of those. But what I have seen is a lot of documentation about psyops in the United States. I saw the thing in the Kennedy files that was redacted. A lot of it's redacted, but one of the sentences from JFK is, Mr. Biden, you are a traitor. That's not on the news. And I think what's happening is you want to control the narrative, the things about Pfizer and Moderna that are there, and the died suddenly if you look that up.
Well, I mean, obviously, from the government has a big interest in TikTok they have less influence over the content that's available on TikTok than they do over the content that's available.
But why are we censoring anything at all?
I don't think they should be censoring any of it. And I've said that. I mean,
I'm talking about on Facebook, Twitter, all that other stuff.
When we started when all that started during COVID,
we had to watch what we were saying.
But we had a couple of shows where we were talking about the fact that it's a First Amendment thing, and these companies that are doing this should be covered by the First Amendment because they're essentially at this point they're the same as public utilities. I mean, it's not like you have 7 alternatives to Twitter.
Well, look at YouTube. There's only one.
Right.
So all that stuff that gets censored, I know we've joked about this, but I posted
Rumble is actually a competitor to YouTube, isn't it? Is it not?
It is, but I'm saying in the space, most people go to YouTube. Well,
they are the giant in the space, for sure.
But that's a Google product, and Google is partnered with the government. Rumble, if you want to be an independent...
Be careful on insulting the Google overlords.
I would never do that. Google's my favorite platform.
The next time you try to map someplace, they're going to send you to the wrong place if you continue this kind of disrespect.
Well, on this show, we're pro Bing, so Bing that up your ass, Sergey, whatever his name is.
Are we?
Not really. Nobody uses that. But what was the other one? Yahoo, Bing, DuckDuckGo, Ask Jeeves, all that other stuff. Nobody uses that. They just Google everything.
I use DuckDuckGo.
But the other thing about DuckDuckGo is, so during the...
but I don't ever DuckDuckGo anything.
Okay. I want to go back to what the hell you just said. I use this. When do you use it? Not at all. Am I supposed to move on from what you just said? The hell's wrong with you? I always use this when I don't.
No, I'm saying, have you ever heard anybody say, yeah, just DuckDuckGo that? Nobody says that.
You just said you do that.
I use DuckDuckGo to Google things.
I hate the show already. I don't want to delete the show. I want to delete you from saying things on the goddamn show. That's the most upsetting thing that you've said in 2 years of doing this.
Oh, really?
I don't even know how to deal with you right now because now I don't know where I was going to go with this.
So when you go to the copier, do you Xerox it?
I don't have a copier.
But when you did, back in the day when you worked at
No,
a
I'm
radio
doing what
station-
you do. I don't make copies. I just have someone make copies for me.
No,
That's what you just said.
You have somebody Xerox it. Even if you don't have a Xerox machine, even if it's like Canon,
What
you
is this
still
show
Xerox
about?
it.
What are we doing right now?
It's the same thing with Band-Aid.
Right.
I see where you're going.
Why are you
Yes.
jumping in on this? This is not making this better. This is making this worse.
All right.
Stop helping.
So if
We
you
need
get a-
fewer people on the sidelines.
If you get a cut on your hand, what do you put on it? Do you put a Band-Aid on it or a Curad? I mean, what do you put on it?
I want to put an axe wound in your head. I'm talking about censorship. I'm talking about censorship, and you either don't want to answer the question or you want to talk about paper products. Which one do you want to do?
What was your question?
God, censorship. Isn't it censorship to God? I can't even get to it. Is it not censorship to what was my question? I can't remember. Getting rid of TikTok is censorship. Why are we censoring that? Because it's another country's product.
That's why, exactly.
Okay. But then if you get rid of that, aren't you telling your citizens, like it's Rome, this is all you're allowed to do?
Yes, exactly. That's
There are
what you're
people
doing.
making a living by just being TikTok.
You are reinforcing the Veronica What's-Her-Face's statement that
Veronica Newland.
we will tell you what the truth is. We will remain your sole source of truth.
So doesn't that just incentivize someone else here? So here's what I think is going to happen. Like,
To dance a stupid dance in front of a camera.
well, in China, I forget what they call this.
By the way, I loved your drop the towel thing the other day. That was really good.
Well, I went to it on. I just said that to you, not TikTok.
Oh, okay.
You were on vacation. I thought you could use the pick me up. What China does, I think they call it the 50-50. We're gonna make 50% on you. We're gonna overpromise, underdeliver. We're gonna make our 50%. On the back end, we're gonna screw you 50% harder. That's literally like a term they use. So when you're buying a coffee mug, let's say, you go to China and you say, "This is what I want," and then they are losing money originally on the deal. Then they start to use inferior materials and all. So you don't know that because you're just being delivered the goods you paid for. And now you're stuck because to fulfill these orders, you have to use this. That's how Apple got started, was using China to outsource these things. So if I'm the government wants a piece of TikTok's revenue. We won't ban it if we get a piece of their revenue, probably 20-25%. Does that change anything? So what that means is now that we're on the ownership of this, you're going to ban this stuff. I've sent you several things on TikTok that would never be on the news that literally are when COVID came around, all these anti-jab people were trying to explain what was going on. And no one was listening, and they were banned from Twitter, Facebook, what's the other stuff? On YouTube. They were right. But their message never got out. Only on TikTok.
Right.
Are we not deciding for the people? We know what's best for
Well,
you.
100%. That's what they're doing. I mean, all of this stuff is everything that's happening. To some degree, is geared towards, or even if it's not geared towards, it has a practical effect of reducing our rights. That's been a constant government
Patriot
effort.
Act.
That's been a constant government effort for most of the existence of the United States. We start off with a lot of rights, and the government's constantly trying to chip away at those rights because governments fundamentally want more control. That's what they're made to do. And then, you had Thomas Jefferson at the beginning. He said that the people have two enemies. One is criminals and two is the government. So that tells you kind of where the Founding Fathers were on their sense of trust for the government and why the Bill of Rights exists. And so things like censorship, banning Twitter, or not Twitter, TikTok. Requiring people to have papers when they're traveling, requiring people to have papers when they're out,
Rolling papers when you're partying.
trying to limit travel, trying to limit the number of people who can assemble in a certain place, trying to eliminate discussions of things like hate speech. All of these are attacks on the Bill of Rights at different levels. All of these are attacks on and attempts to limit our freedoms. And then on top of all that, you still have the government, the federal government, trying to, the 10th Amendment says that anything that's not reserved specifically for the federal government is left for the states. And you see the federal government has been constantly pushing out, trying to have more influence over things that affect our daily lives that really should not be federal issues. So I mean, there's a constant campaign of that going on, and the difficulty is how do you stop that? And I'm not really sure how to stop it, because if you look back through our history, it doesn't matter Republican, Democrat, populist, non-populist. Everybody who's been in office since Kennedy has been trying to reduce our freedoms. I think Kennedy might have been one of the last presidents that actually was thinking along the lines of greater freedoms for people, not
Until
lesser.
they made sure he couldn't think anymore.
Well, they did take care of that.
So if I am a TikTok creator, so Nate and I will watch these people that are selling, like, say, baseball cards or comic books or coins or whatever, and that's kind of like their online store. They do that 4 or 5 times a week. That's how they're making money. You're telling me that the government can shut this thing down. If I was those people, this is how I make my living, right? Is that not the same thing as shutting down my bakery or my restaurant or something like that?
It is the same thing as shutting it down, yeah.
So do those people have any recourse to say, hey, this isn't your business?
Well, I mean,
Isn't it like banning books?
ultimately, what would have to happen is there would have to be some kind of a court case that eventually made it to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court could rule whether.
At that point,
or
it
not.
might be 3 or 4 years.
Right, but that's what would have to happen. I mean, I think if they decide to shut it down, they'll shut it down, and then somebody will have to file a suit to get the court, get it to the Supreme Court. The only other option would be kind of a legislative preemption. So the federal government, somebody introduces a bill to say you can't shut down TikTok.
Well, I think it's funny that when Biden, before he went to Rome and shit his pants with the Pope, was inviting TikTok stars to come in to promote that you should get vaccinated. If you remember, he was bringing in all these weirdos to come in there and tell you to do that using the most popular platform. I think the other piece of this is Facebook's in the tank. YouTube's revenues are down because everyone's over here, right? If you get rid of this, their thought is, well, everyone will drift back to this. They will not.
No, they'll go to something else.
Right. So they might go to Rumble or something. From what I understand, Rumble is like the place to go. I've not been on it. I don't know how it works. I don't know if it's like a YouTube where you have to be on your phone to use it, whatever.
It's like YouTube, but it's the Reddit version of YouTube.
But can you watch it on your television?
I don't know. I think so. I don't know.
I thought it was just on your phone.
I don't know that I've ever actually been on Rumble.
I haven't either. I just hear a lot of comedians
I
will be on Rumble.
I do get on Patreon some, but you have to pay the.
Oh, like a subscription, right?
Yeah, you have to pay a subscription to be on Patreon, and there's a couple of writers that I follow on there. But I've never been on Rumble. I think Rumble's a free site, though.
I do think it's free, but I think you still have to subscribe like you do on Patreon. I think you still have to pay $2 a month or whatever to be a subscriber. But again, that's the same thing. If people are making money, I don't know that anybody has to subscribe. Like, you can subscribe to channels or donate money to people on TikTok. But imagine you build a business and the government steps in and says, nope, I'm wiping it out. There's got to be some kind of recourse.
That's happened in the past when, you had prohibition. I mean, Prohibition shut down a lot of businesses.
And then, but what happened? Bootlegging sprang up. And that got us NASCAR, and that got us a bunch of hillbillies driving, and that's what we're going to get? We're going to get a NASCAR out of it?
You're going to get a bunch of hillbillies dancing in the streets.
I'm kind of all right with that. You see what I mean? Like, people will evolve into the next thing, and I think this is like Prohibition.
I agree. And the bigger problem is how do you stem the tide of infringements on freedoms. And I think that needs to be a discussion that more people are having. And I think that needs to be a discussion that people are having with their representatives. Because the world is getting more and more the control, the government is getting more and more aggressive about its level of control. And, we've talked about digital currencies. We've talked about all the monitoring and everything that goes on. And the more that happens, the easier it is for us to end up in a world where we just don't have any freedoms. And
15-minute cities.
I think that I think that's bad for everybody, even the people who don't see it as important.
I think even the people that are elected to office from these states or cities have no idea you're pissing off your constituents. All it's going to take to lose your seat is somebody go, hey, man, I'm not for that.
Right.
Because it won't matter anything else they're saying. If you had a freedom candidate come in there, like a third-party person, at some point they are going to get enough support because there is one party. Yeah, they have two different affiliations, but they're doing the same thing to the same people.
And I think your point earlier, I think that there is a strong underestimate of the will of folks who are maybe more in that populist camp. I think there's a stronger will there to fight to keep their freedoms than most on the side of government are estimating.
I do think I always refer to it as Rome because I think about the leaders could never understand why people wanted to revolt.
Right.
That's what tore down the empire is getting farther and farther away from understanding the population controls this area.
Right.
I can make a rule, but they're going to gut me in the street at some point. So we can never go in the street. You know what I mean? This elevation of these two different groups, the smaller group that's in control has no idea that the population will hunt you down at some point. And I think we're going to get that.
Yeah, it was the same thing. I mean, South Africa had that kind of thing happening, and then they had the whole revolution, and I mean, it just happens. The ruling elite kind of underestimate or kind of lose touch with the general population, and then they kind of underestimate their will, and that's what happens.
That's as good a place to end as any. Catch us on MySpace. We'll be broadcasting there. You've been listening to Stan Willis, Objectively. Goodbye.
Objectively.